There are 6 hidden signs of love addiction or limerance that are hidden in the way that we sense and feel in our body. And these go beyond the external signs of love addiction, which I will also briefly mention today. But knowing these hidden internal signs are actually the key to healing love addiction, because not only will you be able to identify when you're in that state, you will be able to use your identification of those signals in order to get out of love addiction. I'm going to go through these signs today, and make sure you stick around to the end, because I'm going to show you the 3 steps to healing your love addiction once you know what these signs look and feel like in your body. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Amy Kerr, and I work with women who are sick of being stuck in a cycle of constantly attracting toxic and unhealthy relationship dynamics. And I help them to heal their relationship to themselves and their internal parts from the body, so that they can feel happy and confident on their own and show up as their true, authentic self in love. And if this sounds like you, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, click the bell so you get notified when I post new lessons, which is every week. Now, love addiction or limerance is a state of being infatuated or obsessed with someone beyond the early stages of romance, beyond the kind of lust stage. This is a level of obsession that really takes over your body, takes over your mind and your entire life, and it keeps you stuck in a state of longing for someone who never reciprocates your feelings. So I want to be really clear here. Love addiction is a trauma response. It's actually designed to keep you safe where there is potential danger, and it started in childhood, which I'm going to unpack later in this video. But there are obvious signs to love addiction and limerance, which I quickly want to run through. If you are someone who gets emotionally attached to someone that you hardly know, and you have a tendency to be really compulsive in your past relationships, particularly if you're a serial dater and you leapfrog from relationship to relationship, and you're overly focused on longing for them to reciprocate your feelings, you need to pay attention to this video. Because love addiction or limerance, they're exactly the same thing, is a learned pattern of behavior and internal state where you are so externally focused on acquiring the love and attention from your limerent object or object of affection, the person themselves, that you lose yourself. They become more important to you and take over your internal world. This is a person you probably hardly know. You might have only just met them, or you might have never actually met them, or you might have gotten to know them over 6 months and you still actually don't know someone at 6 months, and you've fallen into this limerent pattern with them. But whatever it is, they've triggered a deeper familiar mechanism inside of you that you've interpreted incorrectly, thinking that it's love and thinking that they're the one. But this mechanism actually just comes from a core wound created in childhood, where you were regularly made to feel rejected, abandoned, not good enough, not seen, heard, loved, understood in the way that you needed to, okay? So your child instinct back then was to chase and acquire your caregiver's attention and love in order to get your connection needs met, right? In order to actually feel safe, you needed connection as much as you needed food, shelter, and water. And hopefully your parents provided those 3 things, but they weren't providing your connection needs enough for what you needed. And so you made up for it by developing and learning this mechanism of chasing in order to get that. So if your caregivers were emotionally unavailable and just constantly weren't able to meet your connection needs, you never got your needs met, and you stayed in a place of scarcity. And so you also stayed in this constant state of longing and pursuit, and this kind of energy of push, push, push to try and get that is a state that you're familiar with and that you are now in if you're in limerance or love addiction. And so yeah, if you never mature out of that, if you carry that dynamic into childhood, you will end up with this mechanism in adulthood. And in my experience, love addiction and limerance is a spectrum, right? It's not like you either are love addicted or you're not. It's actually like, how much are you experiencing this and how much are you not? But a healthy, safe relationship container is co-created by 2 people that have an internally secure and healthy sense of self and are also connecting together to create a relationship. But if you're anywhere on the love addiction spectrum, you have lost a certain amount of your sense of self in order for this limerent pattern to take place. And a part of the limerent pattern is to really spend a lot of time in fantasy, because you got wired from a child that, love was scarce. So when you did get a bit of connection or love from your dad or whoever, it would bring in an extra influx of dopamine because there was so much scarcity around it, right? It's like the slot machine thing. There's so much scarcity, and then you get a little bit of a win, and the high of the win is much, much higher than someone who'd been getting wins consistently over a period of time. So you are in this scarce state as an adult, and you find ways of getting yourself more oxytocin, more dopamine, and fantasy, staying in a fantasy state is actually how you get that extra dopamine. So the fantasy kind of bond is that you've projected onto them that they have everything that you need. You've projected onto them, put them up on a pedestal, that having them as your partner is going to fix everything in your life. It's going to save you from your life and reality. And you need to do everything in order to acquire them, in order to get connection from them. So the presence of scarcity and the presence of them never being quite available is an integral part of how love addiction actually forms. If that person you were trying to go into a limerent state with was actually fully available to you, you wouldn't be able to form the limerent fantasy state you need in order for this dynamic to take place internally within you. So love addiction is actually a love-starved state. And if you want to know more about the attachment origins of it, I go into more detail in this video here. So let's start with 6 external signs that you're in love addiction or limerence. The first one is that you get overly attached emotionally to a person, even though you hardly know them, right? There's already this kind of extreme fear that they're going to leave you and abandon you, even though you've just met them or it's kind of really early stages, and you'll do everything to make them stay, okay? Secondly, you stay in abusive or painful relationships way beyond what you should have, because the pain of not getting your connection needs met and not feeding this addiction is what it really is more painful than the pain of actually staying, right? So there's the pain of leaving, which is much, much higher than the pain of staying. Now, the pain of staying when it's a toxic relationship and there's abuse and cheating and all these things is pretty freaking awful. So that tells you how much perceived pain you have when you leave and how much you are addicted and needing that relationship. The third thing is compulsive behavior, and this can be within a relationship, or this can be kind of in a situationship where you might be compulsively making decisions to go away with them or give them a whole lot of money or to do something that they've asked, or you could be compulsively connecting with someone else, cheating on them, or you could just be compulsively sleeping with a whole lot of people to try and get all of that. Typically, love addicts and limerents are monogamous, but in my experience, it's quite common to have, your limerent object isn't the person you're actually in relationship with, it's someone else. So you've been married for a period of time and you're in limerence with someone else. And, you feeding your addiction is of a higher priority than actually hurting others, because you're in this primal state of trying to get your addiction fed, and that's why you're not actually thinking through the consequences of cheating on someone. The third one is using sex to get connection instead of sex being a loving mutual act. Now, this is an unusual one because you're actually kind of disconnected from the act itself, and you're actually more focused on their experience and giving them what they want, rather than being embodied and really focusing on just as much your pleasure as your other partner's pleasure, right? You're using it as a way to get your connection needs met in that particular moment. The fourth one is that your whole life suffers, right? Your work suffers, your family, friend life suffer, you isolate yourself from your family and friends, or you may not have many friends because you've spent so many years focusing just on a person that you haven't built and developed this community around you, right? So all of your energy, all of your maybe even finances, your focus go into making this situation happen, and the rest of your life is you've just kind of completely left behind. And the last external sign is serial monogamy, and this, as I mentioned earlier, is where you leapfrog from relationship to relationship. Sometimes relationships overlap. If you cheat on your current partner because they're no longer meeting your love addiction kind of chemical high, because of course when you go into a relationship with someone, the chemicals eventually wear off. So then you find someone new to give you that kind of excitement and feel good chemicals. Now, they're all the external signs, but what we're really concerned about are these internal signs, because knowing them and getting to know them are your key to healing, which I'll unpack at the end of the video. So the first internal sign that you are in a love addicted or limerent state is that you often feel jittery and on edge, like you've drunk too much caffeine, when you're either about to see them or when you're actually with that person, with your limerent object. So because you've fantasy bonded with them, you've put them on this massive pedestal and you've idealized them so much, the thought of them or the presence of them gives you this huge rush of chemicals. You've built them up so much in your mind and you're having this intense chemical response every time you either think of them, talk about them, or are with them. But this is too much, right? Like you're getting too high on these chemicals of their kind of thought within you. And I remember this feeling. My hands actually used to shake with excitement. My whole body would feel like there was fizzy drink soda inside of my bloodstream. It was a very, very intense kind of rush and excitement. The second internal sign is that you feel disconnected when you're having sex. And this is an interesting one I mentioned earlier because you're not embodied. You're focusing on just getting your connection needs met, but you're actually feeling in yourself that you're focused on the story, you're focused on the narrative, the fantasy, the excitement of what's happening, rather than the actual embodied sensations and feelings of the sexual act and of what you are experiencing in it. It's like I said, your internal story is all about them, and it's kind of like you don't actually exist, you're just a vessel for their pleasure, as crass as that sounds. The third internal sign is that you notice you are stuck in your head. You have obsessive thoughts about them, right? It's kind of like a gremlin has taken over your internal monologue and it is just all on them. You're completely focused on the intrigue of the romance, what he did, what he said, what he thinks. You love to talk to your friends about it, right? You kind of get a bit high when you talk about it with your friends because this is actually feeding your addiction, right? This kind of whole internal story and fantasy is very part of it. So if you are disembodied and stuck in your head, this is an internal sign. The fourth sign is that you do feel deeply empty and incomplete when you're alone and not fantasizing, right? You are constantly kind of needing this fake connection or fake connection signals from him, whether it's texting with him or watching how he likes your posts on social media or whatever that is. They're all giving you dopamine because you place such a high importance on any of these tiny little fake connections with someone. They give you the chemicals you need, not as much as actually like the full-on fantasy, but they help you to avoid withdrawal. And if you were to actually go into withdrawal, you would be feeling like cravings, headaches, anger, and frustration, right? So they kind of keep you a little bit away from that, even though it's not as good as some kind of full-on connection or some kind of internal fantasy about him. The fourth internal sign that you're in limerence is that you are experiencing a roller coaster of emotions, okay? The high highs, the low lows, and this is kind of obviously brought on by him being unavailable and the kind of always pulling away, and then he gives you a breadcrumb and then he pulls away again. So that's creating it. But your own internal state is also creating this roller coaster, right? You're getting high on dopamine and you've kind of desensitized yourself to it so that you actually need it more and more. So you're giving yourself large amounts of these internal chemicals through the creation of the fantasy and all the other things I mentioned. But then when you don't have them, you crash deeply with these deep feelings of abandonment, feelings of a loneliness, feelings of whatever around the sadness around it, particularly when you do get rejected from him. Because remember, you can only be in a limerent state with someone who is actually rejecting you or pulling away and is not completely available to you. And you're not getting a hit of dopamine in that sense, right? But then when you're together again or when things are better, you just completely forget about the low because that high is so high. It's like you have amnesia for how bad it was before. And yeah, you're just kind of living in this really small world where it's all about getting the next hit of connection. And the last internal sign is that you feel helpless around this compulsive behavior, around this pattern, and it's mixed with shame and confusion. And I might be telling you all these things and you're like, this is great to understand, but how do I actually fix it? There's something really wrong with me. I'm here to tell you, like, I used to be in that state and there is a way forward, and I'll give you the 3 steps in a few seconds. But when you're in this animal-like state where you're just so focused on your next hit, your blinders are on, and you're just in like a primitive survival state, this is the really big sign that you are in a love addicted or limerent state and you need to do something about it. So let's unpack how to do that. The very first step, and you are going to hate me for this, particularly my clients that come into my program, you've got to withdraw from strong emotion. Okay, you are an addict at the moment, and unfortunately you need to go into withdrawal. You need to become emotionally sober. Okay, so go cold turkey on the ways that you are aware of right now that feeds your addiction. And this isn't an instant process. It's not like all of a sudden you're just going to give up smoking or alcohol, because this is an internal process you're trying to go cold turkey on, and it can happen before you even realize you're in it. But just recognize when you're in it and get yourself out of it, right? Change your state. And this may mean that you need to defer your coping mechanisms in a way. So instead of thinking of those kind of fantasy thoughts, you're just going to focus on binge watching a Netflix show, or you're going to allow yourself to have chocolate when you need it, or whatever. Those things are far healthier than this limerent state that you've gotten yourself into over the years. And I encourage you to allow yourself to, in this season, just go towards other things that just aren't going to harm you as much. But what you'll find when you do go into withdrawal and you're not doing these things because the reason you were doing them was to avoid the deeper feelings of loneliness and sadness, you are going to need to learn how to feel them. You are going to need to encourage your body to sit with those uncomfortable feelings of aloneness, of shame. Sit with your inner child, listen to her, allow the feelings to arise, allow them to pass, because they will pass. And don't do this alone. You know, have someone with you, like have a friend, a coach, a therapist, whoever that you can talk to while you go through this withdrawal process. But withdrawal is the first step. The second step is really something you need to do at the same time as the first step, and that's to learn self-soothing skills. So at the moment, you've been self-soothing by going to the limerent state and allowing yourself to like get into this fantasy state to avoid deeper feelings of loneliness and sadness. But there are safer ways for us to feel safe in the body, beyond binging television, Netflix, and chocolate, that actually allow your nervous system to regulate. So find solo, alone ways to feel safe in your body and just learn simple self-soothing skills, right? Physical self-soothing, and co-regulate with a pet, co-regulate with a friend. Just allow yourself to connect with safe friends, connect in safe environments. Connection is very, very healing when you're withdrawing from love addiction. But it's very important to have those nurturing practices like taking a warm bath. Honestly, warm bath saved my nervous system through all of this. But whatever that might look like for you, other practices like meditation and breathing can help as well. But learning to feel safe in the body while you're going through the withdrawal process will make a big difference. The third step, and this is kind of like step one and step two are going quite well. The third step is to learn embodiment, and this is the antidote to what you've previously been doing, which is axing off the body and axing you off to just be in the kind of state of chasing someone else. You've effectively just been ignoring yourself this whole time. And this is embodiment of the connections around you. Start with your platonic connections. So what I mean by embodiment is actually to be in your body while you're with someone. And you can do this by tracking your internal and physical state while you're in connection with someone. Start with a safe and easy container. Don't start with a friend or family member that triggers you. Start with someone safe and just practice feeling yourself, feeling your reactions, feeling your body. Notice how you feel on the chair. Notice what the temperature is. Stay in your senses and sensations while you're with someone else. And really lean into what that felt sense of connection feels like to that person, right? That's real connection as opposed to the fantasy connection we've been living in our head. Believe it or not, once we start to feel a felt sense of beautiful connection with our friends, that nourishes us. That actually nourishes us. The fantasy does not nourish us. You will feel that sense of nourishment, and there will be less need to go into that fantasy scarce place, because all of a sudden now you're feeling abundance of your connections around you. You can actually feel it in your body and in your heart. And that is so much more nourishing for you. And I really recommend also a self-pleasure practice around this, like learning how to really care for and look after your body when it comes to your own physical needs can be so beautiful and nourishing too, because previously you've been shut down and cut off from those needs. And when we learn how to slow down and really pay attention to all of our physical sensations, we can learn this very juicy, very beautiful, nourishing way of living that is just going to, again, in our brain, cut off any need to go into that limerence state, because all of a sudden we're feeling very nourished in our present moment. These 3 steps are all going to help you to mature out of love addiction, because let's be clear, it's this very young, naive part of you that's in control when she's in this love addicted state. And all we're doing is we're maturing this part of ourselves. So it's also going to open yourself up to all the nuances of different types of connections and nourishment that is available to you as well, that at the moment when you're in a limerent state, you're completely cut off from, because you're so focused on that limerent object. So I hope that these signals have helped you in these steps to move forward and to help you get embodied when it comes to healing and turning this around. And I really urge you to watch my webinar next. I go through the 3 complete steps around healing and being happy and okay on your own. If you've come from limerence and love addiction, it's going to be very powerful for you. You can click the link to join me below. I also have a free Facebook group if you want to come join us and hang out. We do lives almost every week. And if you would like to know more about how to work with me one-on-one inside Heal Your Heart School, there is a link to my calendar in the description below. If you just click there, book a time, and you can speak with me or one of my team members. And please comment below if you have any questions on the video today. I'd be really curious to hear how you found it. And please do click the like button, because it does actually help me a lot in the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already. And here are some follow-on videos for you to watch so you can move one step closer to having a beautiful, healthy, secure, happy, non-love addicted relationship with yourself. And I will see you in the next video.